So 1970s style teachers, they had big flared trousers and flowing hair and bandanas and beads going groovy, man. And at my school, they decided that the alphabet was not groovy enough. Now, there's a reason why there was an orange there with 3 legs, okay? I'm just about to explain it. It's all to do with the way that I got taught to read, or rather, didn't. They decided the alphabet was not groovy enough and they were going to change the way that they taught it. So instead of learning, like I expect all you did, A, B, C, D, you just did that, yeah? We got something a little bit different. Every letter of the alphabet got its own special name and its own special color and its own special action. So instead of just M, I got 3-legged orange. Instead of F, I got floppy lilac. Instead of I got pink with a dot on the top. Does that make any sense to you? No, it didn't make any sense to me either, or any of the other kids in my year at school. And pretty much all of us failed to learn the alphabet and failed to learn to read. So when I was 6, we moved house and I went to a new school, and everybody at the new school was better than me at reading and writing. And I do mean everybody. You know, they're walking around with those books with the coloured stars on. You remember the coloured stars to show how well you're doing with your reading? There'd be silver star for the really good readers. And then there'd be gold star for the really amazing readers. And then there'd be platinum star encrusted with rubies and sprinkled with diamonds because the readers were so good they could even read it backwards. But me, I was in the rusty tin star group. I really wasn't very good at all. And this might never have changed, but then something happened at the local public library. Now, in the UK, in the 1970s and the early 80s, when I was growing up, we went to the library a lot. Do any of you go to libraries and borrow books from libraries? We went a lot, and there were good reasons for this. And one of the reasons was that life in the 1970s was a little bit boring. For a start, and this might shock you, back in the 1970s, television used to stop. Yep, television used to completely stop. I mean, today you've got multiple channels, 24/7. We had 3 channels, and at any given time, one of them would just stop, and there'd be nothing on the screen except, well, there'd be this noise that kind of went and speckles. Or, if you were very lucky, there might be a picture of a girl in a headband playing noughts and crosses with a stuffed clown sitting opposite. You think I'm making this up, don't you? Anyone here from the UK who can verify that? It's true, isn't it, Carmel? Yeah, you know. That's what we used to get. It would just be a picture on the screen for ages while you waited for the shows to start. And I'd be sitting there on my little seat looking at the picture. And my mum would go, "I need to go outside and play. It's just the picture." "No, it's the picture." That is how exciting life was in the 1970s. And the other thing that might shock you, in the 1970s, there were no video games. Nothing at all. No computer games. Nothing at all. Actually, I'm not being completely honest with you. There was a computer game. The very first computer game came out in 1972, and you could play it on big machines in pubs and clubs. And then in 1976, for the first time ever, you could take it home to your own house and play it on your own television screen. And this absolutely blew our minds. Oh my word, the gameplay, the graphics, the sound effects, it went like this. Anybody? Anyone want to guess? Anyone? Did you know? You know, you recognize it, don't you? It's called Pong. The very first. Black screen, white dots down the middle, a white rectangle, and a little white square going like tennis, you know, like table tennis. And you had a little button that you twisted so the bats went up and down. That was it. And let me tell you, girls and boys, it rocked our world. It really did. But that was pretty much it. And so on a Saturday morning, when we got fed up with playing Pong, and the telly had stopped, we'd go off down the library. Me and my brother and sister, we'd go off down the public library. And I normally only went there to do other things because libraries then, like today, did other things like arts and crafts and stuff. And so I used to like drawing. And so I would do a bit of drawing. But then one day I picked up this book. It was called Five Go to Smuggler's Top. Has anyone here heard of Five, or the famous Five books? In the UK, famous Five books, massively, massively popular. So loads of kids were reading them. And I picked up this book and I started reading it and I didn't stop. I kept going. And I went to my mum and I said, Mum, who is this Enid Blyton? And has she written any other stories? And my mum said, you're lucky because she's written about 350 million, which was a bit of an exaggeration, but she'd written a lot. And so I was able to work my way all the way through the famous Five series. And then I went on to other authors like Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, and Joan Aiken, The Wolves of Willoughby Chase, and Black Hearts in Battersea, and then classics like Anne of Green Gables, The Little Princess, Tom's Midnight Garden. And my brain woke up. All of a sudden, it just went, and I didn't see books the same way anymore. You know, this used to be, for me, a pile of printed pages that I had to struggle through. But now it was something quite different. Now it was a trap door to another world anytime I needed it. And you know, let's be honest, school days are not always easy, are they? There are days when you'd really rather be somewhere else. And I'm talking to the teachers as well. And on days like this, I just sit in the corner, open up my trap door, and vanish into another world. And I know that some of you will know exactly what I mean when you realize and say how important that was for me to be able to escape. And I still do it today. I'm still exactly the same. I still have my books to vanish into. I had one on the plane on the way over. I was vanished inside. I was on the plane. I was thousands of miles in the air, and I was still somewhere else through a trapdoor. Hello, New School. Hello. Shall we train them as well, do you think? Should we do the training? Yeah, okay. Listen, we did a bit of training earlier. I explained that I'm a very needy author, and I do like a lot of audience interaction. So let's do some training. First of all, this is what I like a lot of when I step onto the stage. Show them how it's done. Thank you. And then I also like, if I tell a cheesy, really bad joke, this. And if you're excited, this. And if you're emotionally moved, this. And if there's a cliffhanger, this. Da, da, da. And possibly for a random reason, this. Okay, you're up to speed. Now, I've been telling everyone how I first started getting my ideas for writing, and it began with me being really rubbish at reading and being at school where they taught the alphabet in such a weird way that this had meaning. The alphabet, instead of a letter M, I was told to call it three-legged orange. Is that weird, New School? It is weird, isn't it? But then things changed. I decided to make my own trapdoor. Hello, New School. And some in school. Nice to see you. Come on in. So you've arrived at the point when I'm explaining how things changed for me. When I started out being a rubbish reader and a rubbish writer, but because I've got into books, I finally found the right book, Five Go to Smuggler's Top by Enid Blyton, switched me on to reading, and now, fast forwarding through time, now I started making my own, and this is it. This is the very first Ali Sparks novel, written when I was a little bit older than you guys. I was in secondary school. I was a teenager when I wrote this. And it was inspired by the adventure stories that I had loved. And I put me in it. And I put my two best friends from school in it. So here we are. That is me on the end there with the dark hair. That's Valerie, my friend Valerie in the middle. My friend Louisa there on the end in red. So we're having a camping holiday adventure, just like the famous 5, the stories that I had loved reading. So there we go, that's me and Valerie and Louisa outside our tent. And here's a picture of me and Valerie and Louisa inside the tent. Here's a picture of Louisa at the stream, not far from the tent. And here's a picture of the 3 of us outside the front of the tent. It is a very intense book. Okay. It's a very intense book. Okay. Anyway, we're in the middle of the New Forest near where I live in Hampshire in the south of England. And we spot these dodgy-looking characters who seem to be burying something underground. And so we go to investigate, and we discover the secret underground cavern. And in the cavern, there is a crate. And in the crate, there is a statue covered in gold and silver and rubies and diamonds. And we know that this statue has been stolen by some baddies. So we decide that we're going to go after those baddies. Oh yeah, we're going to be a hero. We're going to rampage through the New Forest. We're going to hunt the baddies down. We're going to bring the baddies to justice. But first of all, we're going to have a cup of tea. Because if you read this particular set of adventure stories, they nearly always have a really important tea room scene in every one. So we have our cup of tea, and we start running around trying to find the baddies. And of course, we find the baddies, or rather, the baddies find us. And here's a picture of us all tied up down the hole, trying to escape. And then, of course, we do escape. We start running around a bit more. There's a bit of car chase action. There's a bit of police action. When I say a bit of police action, I mean I wasn't actually very good at drawing policemen, so I just drew a bit of a policeman. And at the end of the story, of course, we are heroes, we save the day, and here's a picture of my rather 80s-style trainers stamping down on a gun that's been thrown through the air. And that's it. That's the end of the very first Ali Sparks novel. I wrote a novel, everybody! And I just did it for fun. I really enjoyed it. I like writing my own story. I like doing the pictures. I like putting my friends in it. I liked it so much, I wrote a 4-part series. And I showed these to my art teacher at school, and he said, Alison, these are quite good. I think you should send them off to a publisher and see what happens. So with a bit of help from him, I did. I sent 3 of my books to Penguin Books Limited. And this is what I got back from Penguin Books Limited. My first ever rejection letter. It says, Dear Alison, thank you for sending in your 3 manuscripts, Webster Week Out, Webster's on Water, and Webster's on the Warpath. I must say I was very impressed, and I did enjoy reading them. They must have taken an awful lot of concentrated work, not to mention time. Unfortunately, and then it goes on to explain all the reasons why they're not going to publish my books. So that was quite disappointing, but if I'm honest with you, I wasn't really all that cut up because I wasn't really planning to be an author at this point in my life. I was planning to be on the stage. I was a theatrical child. I wanted to be in shows as a singer and an actor. And then I tried to do that, I went to London. I tried to get into the West End, and I got into the West End, but only backstage, helping people change their costumes. I didn't get any much further than that, and I ended up back in my hometown, back in Southampton in the south of England, and I had to get a proper job. And the job that I got eventually was as a reporter on the local newspaper, Southampton Daily Echo. I became a reporter, and I absolutely loved it. And it was a brilliant start for me. If any of you fancy writing, just give me a little wave. If you do fancy maybe being a writer of some kind. Yeah, okay. If you fancy that, working on a newspaper or as a journalist is a really good start. It teaches you lots of skills that you need to write a good story in fiction as well. And so I loved working for them. And then I moved across to work for the BBC as a broadcast journalist in the local radio station. And I absolutely loved that too. But I started to miss the writing because you don't do so much writing on a radio station as you do on a local newspaper. And so that's when I started sending off stories again. I sort of went back to this old letter because even though it said no thank you, it's actually a letter with lots of good advice in it. And then I started sending off stories to publishers and comedy script ideas to the BBC. And what tended to happen is I'd get another letter back, like this one, saying, "Dear Ali, thank you so much for sending us your lovely story. We really did enjoy reading it. Unfortunately," and there'd always be a reason why they weren't going to do anything with it. So I knew I had to keep trying, had to keep going. And eventually I got lucky. And I managed to get some interest because I was invited to send a script to the BBC animation unit. I did some workshop stuff with them. They liked my ideas, some of the comedy stuff I'd got out there. I managed to get some comedy onto national radio. They'd heard it and they liked it. And they said, "Have you got an idea for a comedy animation?" Has anybody here watched Wallace and Gromit or Shaun the Sheep? Is that a thing over here? Shaun the Sheep? Yeah. Okay. These are the people, they all work in Bristol, in the southwest of England. And so this workshop, this I did at this BBC unit where they did all the animation, really helped out. And they said, "Send us a script." And I sent them this. This is my comedy animation script. Story of Vince the Vampire Bat, who falls in love with Bella the Fruit Bat. Now, this is quite difficult for Vince because Bella's a fruit bat and he's a vampire bat. She does not know that he's a vampire bat, and she does not approve of the whole blood-sucking scene. And so he has to pretend to be a fruit bat and eat fruit when he's out on dates with Bella, which is quite difficult because fruit, I don't know if you know this, but vampire bats can't eat fruit. It's genuinely poisonous to them. Anyway, to be honest with you, it's a classic storyline. Boy bat meets girl bat. Girl bat meets boy bat. Boy bat falls in love with girl bat. Girl bat falls in love with boy bat. Boy bat doesn't tell girl bat that he's a vampire bat, and girl bat thinks he's a vampire bat. Then girl bat finds out he's not a vampire bat, and in fact, he finds out he's not a fruit bat, but that he is a vampire. You get the drift anyway. There's confusion. There's confusion, and then she realizes that he's a vampire bat, and everything falls apart. It's a terrible, tempestuous, passionate tale of love between two bats. A doomed batty love that can never be. And people say to me, "Do you know what? That sounds a little bit like Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, doesn't it?" It does. It sounds a little bit like Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. And I say to them, it might sound a bit like Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, but my characters are much furrier, much smellier, and they can pee on people's heads from a great height. I don't think Romeo and Juliet ever did that, did they? Anyway, I sent it off to the animation unit at Bristol, and the animation unit at Bristol liked it. Things started to get really seriously exciting. I'm invited up to Bristol for meetings. They like my script. They like it so much, they asked me to develop it a bit further, and they even pay me proper BBC money. And then I'm on a short list of 3, and one of us 3 is going to have our screenplay turned into a 3D movie, an animated movie, and shown all over the world. And it's looking like it's going to be me. Because there's lots of emails, lots of letters, lots of phone calls. And then one day I get a call from the head of the studio who says, "Ali, you know how much we love your story about Vince the Vampire Bat. Unfortunately, we've just run out of funding and we can't do anything with it after all. Sorry." So that was the end of that one. But I didn't give up. I had other ideas too. And here's another idea. Do any of you have a little brother or sister? Yeah. And do you ever have to sit down and read to your little brother or sister? Yeah. Aren't you lovely? And do any of you have at home one of those noisy books? You know, the ones where you press a button and they make noises, they whistle and they clang? Yeah, okay. So you're going to get this next bit of my story. At this point in time, I was a mum with quite young kids, and they loved the noisy books. And it was, "Mummy, Mummy, read it again, whistle, whistle, clang, clang. Mummy, Mummy, read it again, whistle, whistle, clang, clang. Mummy, Mummy, read it again, whistle, whistle, clang, clang." And in the end, I had to stamp on them and throw them out of the window, which you shouldn't do with young children because the police will get involved. No, I stamped on the books and threw them out the window. Kids wouldn't fit through. But I thought they are a good idea. It's just that they drive you nuts because it's the same thing over and over again. So suppose you could come up with a noisy book which was different every time because you put the noise into it yourself. So I came up with this. This is my prototype book, The Boy Who Said Plop. I can tell you're impressed. And in this story, thank you. In this story, every time the boy says plop, which he does quite a lot, it is highlighted in yellow in the text. And you see the yellow bit, and then you press the button, and out comes your very own plop you put in earlier. I'd like to show you how it works. But I am going to need someone to come up and put the plop in for me. Oh, your hand was definitely up first. Do you want to come and join me up the front? Okay. Okay. Oh, I've got two. Both of you come up. That's fine. I'll have a double plop situation now. I think two is probably going to be our limit here, but we can see who does the best plop. Okay. Thank you very much for joining me. What is your name? Samishta. Kavanagh. Okay, Samishta, you can go first. All I need you to do, I'm going to count to 3, and then press the record button, and I need you to shout out a really loud plop for me, okay? Okay, ready for 1. 1, 2, 3. Plop! Oh, that was very impressive. Let's listen. Yes. Okay, Kavanagh, can you do any better? 1, 2, 3. Plop. Okay, that was gentler. I think you should do it together now, okay? A double plop situation, as loud as you can. 1, 2, 3. Plop! It's more like it. Let's see if you can hear it through here. Yes! Well, a round of applause, please, for my volunteers. Thank you. You can take your seat again. Samishta and Kavanagh. Samishta and Kavanagh, when you get back home later on today, if your parents say, oh, how did that thing with the author this morning go? And you can say, well, she got us up in front of several schools on the stage to do a plop. There might be a letter of complaint to the Abu Dhabi Book Fair. So I think to be on the safe side, we should probably now get everybody to do a plop. Are you ready, everybody? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see if it's worked. Yay! You are now officially in an Ali Sparks book. So, off to London I go again, this time to visit 3 different publishers who've all agreed to have a look at this amazing new idea for a storybook that I've got. I see Egmont, I see Macmillan, I see Usborne Books. They look at this and they go, oh, The Boy Who Said Plop. So you press the button and it goes, oh, so every time you need it in the story, it goes, I say, Sandra, look over here. It goes, unfortunately, and all 3 of them turned it down. Thank you. Somebody said or, but I think I need more than that. But a few days later, I get this phone call from Usborne Books, and they say, hey, listen, Ali, The Boy Who Said Plop is not for us, but do you have any other ideas for other children's stories? And so, of course, I said yes, and I sent them a couple of ideas, and one of them was this, Dax Jones and the Cola Club. This is a story about a boy called Dax Jones who one day discovers that he is a shapeshifter and he can turn himself into a fox. And shortly after this discovery, a rather sinister agent from the government comes and takes him away to a secret school. And at this school, there are a bunch of other kids who've also got amazing powers out of nowhere. And they are known as Children of Limitless Ability, or COLAs for short. So this is what I sent off to Usborne Books. And Usborne Books liked it. Things started to get seriously exciting. I'm invited up to London for meetings. I'm talking to the editorial director of Usborne Books. She likes my story. She likes it so much. We're talking about a 3-part series. We're talking about the artwork for the cover. We're talking about any changes I may need to make to improve the first draft. It's getting so exciting. Back at home, everyone's going, yay, Ali, we always knew we were going to make it in the end. This is so cool. You're going to be an author. And it's looking like they're right because there's lots of emails, lots of letters, lots of phone calls, and then one day I get the call from the editorial director of Usborne Books. And she says, Ali, you know how much we love your story about the boy who turns into a fox? Unfortunately, we can't publish it after all. Sorry. So I went home and gave up. All right, I gave up for about 20 minutes. Actually, I have to be honest with you. I nearly did give up properly because this has been going on for years and years of trying and getting back letters saying, thank you so much for your lovely story. We really liked your story. Unfortunately, again and again and again. And I'm thinking, what is the point of this? Why am I putting myself through this? And then I thought, I'm doing this all on my own. I need some help. Have you heard of agents? Have you heard of agents? Yeah. I thought that's what I need. I need an agent, somebody who can promote my stuff for me. And I managed to get a brilliant agent. She signed me up. And a few weeks later, she sent off all my stuff to various publishers. And a few weeks later, I get a phone call from Oxford University Press. And they say, hey, Ali, love your book. We really love your book about the boy who turns into a fox. And I'm thinking, yeah, great. Thanks very much for phoning. Is there any chance we could just move this conversation along a bit? Can we just get to the unfortunately bit? Because we all know it's coming. And they said, we'd like 5, please. And I went, yeah, 5-part series. Could you do that for us? And I went, because obviously I lost the power of speech. And I had to go and lie in a dark room with a damp flannel on my face for several hours before I got it back. And then I said, yes, I can do it. I can write you a 5-part series. And that is what I did. Dax Jones and the Cola Club became The Shapeshifter, Finding the Fox. And the whole 5-part series, it looked like that, the first edition. And now it looks like this. And then what came after that was another 5-part series of the Monster Makers series with Scholastic. And then standalones like Frozen in Time and Dark Summer and Wishful Thinking. And then the Switch series and then the Unleashed series and the Night Speakers series. As you can see, I've been pretty busy ever since. I added them up the other day and I think I've written 55 children's or young adults books over the last few years. So that is my story. That's how it happened for me. And I always think it's kind of weird when I go back to the start to look at it, how it all began when I was still in school with this, the very first Ali Sparks book. Although you could probably argue where it really started was in the library with 5 Go to Smuggler's Top, the book that changed my life. Because libraries and books really do change lives. Whoever would have thought the kid who was literally the worst at reading and writing in the whole school would one day end up writing books for a living? Who knew? So that is my story. I think we've got time for a few questions if anyone has any, and then I've got a few more things to tell you about where some inspiration has come from. Is anybody a question they'd really like to ask at this point? Yes? Okay, say that again a bit louder. Where did the animal stories come from? I really love wildlife. I'm really into it in a big way. And I like to imagine what it would be like to be wildlife. So that's when I wanted to have a magical story that was a bit weird about a boy who changes into something. I thought it would be changed into a fox. It'd be really interesting to find out how a fox lives. So, and then he turns into a peregrine falcon later as well. So I studied the peregrine falcon, which is the fastest bird on the planet. So that was really important to do as well. Oh, we've got another school arriving just in time for the last chunk of this. How are we off for time? I'm making it just past about 10 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, as we've got our last school. Hello, last school, give me a wave. Hello. I'm glad you made it. How many more people are coming in? Are you guys over there? Are you joining in? Give me a wave if you're coming to join in. Okay, come and get your seats as quickly as you can. Let's do a little last bit before we finish. Okay. So yes, they asked me when I came over here, they said, can you tell us about your inspiration and where you get your ideas from? And that's more or less what you're asking as well, about what the animal ideas, where did they come from? Now, I know, because I do workshops in schools all the time, I know that you all have great ideas too. I think the difference is if you are a writer, you kind of can't help it, you just are. And those ideas stay in your head a lot longer, and you mess around with them and you tease them out, and they become stories, written down stories. Is everybody settled now? Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples of inspiration that's come to me. My inspiration comes all over the place all the time. I mean, an obvious one is this one here. The Monster Makers series was inspired by my sons and their drawings of mad monsters. They kept drawing these really freaky, fun monsters, and they called them Tors and Mites. And they created a whole world called Taurania. And I sort of stole that from them, and I wrote a whole series of books based on what would happen if somehow the monsters on their drawings came to life. And that was a really good, fun thing to do. So my sons inspired me for that. Another book was inspired by a gravestone, which, as you can see, is to Douglas Lane. And he was killed on the Southampton Common, which is close to where I was living at the time, when he was struck by lightning, or the tree that he and two friends were sheltering under was struck by lightning back in 1955, I think it was. So it was a really sad story. And me and my two sons, who were quite little, would walk through the graveyard on our way to Southampton Common, and we would see this gravestone. And I'd think to myself, imagine if those kids who got killed by lightning were still here, sort of playing like ghosts. And so that is how it began. That's how that all started. And it led to a book called Thunderstruck. And in this book, my two young characters in the modern day are out on the school field on a school sports day, and they are also under a tree, and the tree gets struck by lightning, and they too are, well, they think they're killed, but actually they get saved. They get pulled back because there are paramedics nearby. And so that's what they do, they get saved. And thereafter, they can see the ghosts of other children who died years and years and years ago and did not get saved. But they can see them now. And these ghosts are like teenagers, and they get to know them. Initially, they're scared, and then they get to know them. And these ghosts are really quite helpful to them. So that was the inspiration for that one. Here's another inspiration. This is my dog. She's called Willow. She's a Labradoodle. Has anybody here got a dog? Anyone got a dog? A few of you? Yes. We love our dogs, don't we? We absolutely love our dogs. And I always thought my dog understands me. See, that dog knows what's going on in my mind all the time. And so she is now on this book here, My Sister is a Dog, which came out earlier this year. So she is the star of it. And that's been a lovely one to do as well. And hey, here's some more inspiration. Do you recognize this? Hands up, give me a wave if you've been up the Burj Khalifa. Yes. So my inspiration came from this country. I've been to this country, this is the 4th time. The first time I came, it was up at Dubai, and I saw this tower. I thought, that's amazing. And I was writing a series of books. And this series is called Night Speakers. And these books are about children who keep waking up at the same time every night. They keep waking up exactly at 1:34 a.m. And they don't know why. It's driving them mad, because if you can't sleep, everything starts to fall apart. Things are falling apart in their lives at school, with their friends. They can't cope. And then they realize, they find each other because they get so bored with sitting there staring at the ceiling that they get up and they go out in the dark and they find each other, and they realize that all three of them have exactly the same problem, and they don't know why it's happened. But then they realize that all three of them have something else going on. All of a sudden, they can speak to animals. They can understand animals, and animals can understand them. Something has changed in their brains. It's changed in the language centers of their brains, and they can now talk to anyone. They can even speak any human language. Imagine that. People say to me, what would be your superpower if you could have it? And they think I'm going to say, oh, I'd shapeshift into a fox like Dax Jones, or learn to fly, or be invisible. But actually, this is what I would like. I would like to be able to speak any language instantly. Give me a wave if you agree that that would be an amazing superpower. And now give me a wave if you'd rather fly. Give me a wave if you'd rather be invisible. Okay, these are all pretty cool powers, to be honest. But yes, to be able to speak any language instantly. So I was writing this series when I came to Dubai for the first time, about 5 or 6 years ago. And I saw the tower. And I had 5 books to write. And the last book has to be really spectacular. You know, if you read a series of books, each one has to take you a bit further, and the last one has to blow your mind. And I thought, the only way this is going to work is if I have my final scenes right at the top of the Burj Khalifa. Do you agree that's a good idea? Yeah? Okay. Do you want to hear a little bit of it? Okay. Because the last book is called Night Forever, and you can see what's happening there. She is climbing, or yeah, possibly she is, or dangling off it. In fact, what is happening is my 3 characters are trying to save the world. Things have got really bad in the world, and they've got help. They've got help from an alien called Kara. She's an alien who's come from other planets, and she has a way of getting onto our world. And only with help from Kara can they stop the problem, which is going to save the planet. And if they don't stop it, everything's game over for everybody on Earth. The only thing Kara, the alien, needs to get a signal into space, but she's not high enough. They meet in England, in the UK, and she says, I need to get up high. And they say, well, go up a mountain. We've got Ben Nevis in Scotland. And she says, that's not high enough. And the atmosphere is wrong. It needs to be a dry atmosphere. It needs to be uninterrupted by wind and storms. And they said, okay. And how high do you need to be? She said, oh, about 1 kilometer. They said, well, it's nearly 1 kilometer. We've just had an idea. How about the Burj Khalifa? So they have to fly to Dubai and attempt to get Kara as high as she can get. And it's terrifying. Have any of you seen any videos about people who climb to the top and then come back down and abseil? Yeah, you've seen that? Yeah? Tell me a bit more about that when I'm signing later, okay? People have to go, don't they? Have to clean the tower, so they abseil down the side of the tower. And so my key characters, they've been taken up the top, and now they are dangling off the edge. They're being helped by royalty. A very helpful local sheikh is helping them out because he's allowed to get to the top of the tower and he can take them. So that's what's happening. But it's really absolutely terrifying. Now, I studied a lot. I went up the tower as far as I could go, and then I also did some research online. And my characters, Tima, Eleanor, and Matt, have gone up the top, and now they're hanging over the edge. Tima decided to watch Eleanor hanging onto the edge of the crow's nest rather than look behind her. If a killer storm was on its way, she didn't want to look it in the eye. Looking up wasn't too soothing either. Kara was climbing the satellite connection box, a tall rectangular canister of metal which jutted into the sky a little higher up. Just when you thought terrifying had no more meaning for you, Kara showed a whole new dimension. She had bullied the sheikh into allowing it. She had slipped out of her harness, pulled a long, wand-like metal device out of her bag, tucked it into her zipped-up jacket, and climbed up without a moment's hesitation. The top of the satellite was flat and no bigger than a shoebox in surface area. Rising next to it was a thin bronze pole with what looked like a pear drop on top of it, a small, decorative Arabian offering to the heavens. Kara took hold of it and used it to help her stand. We're talking about not just the top of the Burj Khalifa, but the little bit that goes even higher, the satellite connection. She stood up there with no harness. Hazza stood on the rim of the crow's nest, a foot anchored on either side of its iron circle, and grabbed Kara's ankles with both hands as she plucked the metal wand from her jacket, her long dark plait buffeting her face as the wind rose around her. She softened her knees, crouching lower for a better center of gravity to manage the gusts. Then she let go of her handhold to tweak something on the device. Tima stifled a scream as Kara swayed there, fiddling until some blue lights lifted up along its side. Then, with a heart-stopping sway to the left, Kara snatched hold of the bronze post and steadied herself. "Matt!" cried Kara as soon as she'd regained her balance. "I need you to take your shoe off and put your leg against Hazza's." It gets more terrifying from that point. I'd like to read you more, but I'm aware that we're probably running out of time. But can you just imagine being right at the very, very top and standing on a tiny little box right up on the spire and taking your harness off? It would be insanity, wouldn't it? Okay, we are, I'm afraid, at the end of our session. Now that so many more of you are here, I would really love to talk to you for a bit longer, but I know we have other people coming up to present. So there's one more thing I need to do. At the beginning, we did the whirly-whirly, didn't we? Okay. Now, I need to reverse the whirly-whirly, because those of you who saw it earlier are now in a state of hypnosis. And if I don't reverse it, you could all leave the building today and start walking around in circles and headbutting the walls, which is never a good thing. So let us reverse the whirly-whirly, and everyone can have a look. This is what we did earlier, and we're going to reverse it now. For this to work, everybody, eyes to me, look in the center, don't look away. Everyone take a deep breath. Hold it. Let it go. Keep your eyes focused on the center of the whirly-whirly. Do not look away. I'm going to take you out of the hypnosis you were into earlier, and everyone else will be dehypnotized by the end of this as well. But at this point, you are all now in a state of hypnosis, so listen very carefully to my words. You're feeling relaxed and sleepy, and you know that every word I say makes perfect sense. So every time you see an Ali Sparks book, you'll want to read it all the way through, and then you'll want another and another, pausing only long enough between them to go and post a 5-star review on Amazon. And when your parents come to you for Christmas and birthdays and say, "Would you like an iPad or a new computer or a pony?" You'll say, "No, all I really want is another Ali Sparks book." This will make you very happy in your lives. It'll make Ali Sparks even happier. Also, when you return from this event today, you'll tell everybody, "We had a marvelous time at the Abu Dhabi Book Fair. We must go again, year after year." I just thought I'd put that one in there for the sponsors. We're nearly there now. Keep your eyes on the center. Do not look away. I'm going to count us all down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look at my head. My head did shrink, didn't it? Yeah. Woo! Okay, we are now at the end. You have been brilliant. Eyes to me, everybody. 3, 2, 1. You're all dehypnotized. You're all back in the room. Thank you very much.